The docking bay of the massive Galvy starship hummed with a nervous energy, as the human delegation stood in quiet anticipation. They had arrived to depart for the Interstellar Alliance summit on Orion Prime, fully aware that their presence would draw attention. For many of the assembled alien races, humans were still a novelty, a curiosity rarely seen in person. The humans had grown accustomed to the gawking and whispers, the wide-eyed stares and hushed tones as aliens speculated about this relatively new species on the galactic stage. However, it wasn't just the humans who would steal the show this time. What the aliens weren't prepared for, what they could never have imagined, were the bizarre and terrifying creatures that accompanied the human delegation. As the humans calmly waited for boarding instructions, two enormous, muscled beasts stood at the ambassador's side, radiating an aura of barely restrained power. The Vzor, apex predators from the death world of Zus, were a sight that sent a ripple of terror through the crowd. "Are those the Vzor?" gasped a stray diplomat, his insectoid mandibles clicking in distress. The reaction was echoed across the bay as various species recognized the creatures and recoiled in fear. The Vzor were infamous across the galaxy, known for their razor-sharp teeth and claws capable of shredding through most metals. On their home planet, they were virtually unkillable, untamable, and they ruled as the apex predators of their harsh ecosystem. Yet, here they were, calmly standing by the human ambassador's side as if they were nothing more than common pets. The sight was unsettling, to say the least. One of the Vzor, a hulking beast named Remus, affectionately bumped its massive head against the female ambassador, nearly knocking her off balance. She laughed, the sound light and carefree, as she reached up to scratch behind one of his stubby auditory nerve stalks. "Who's my good boy, That's right, Remus, you're such a good boy," she cooed, her voice full of warmth. The Vzor growled happily in response, his serrated teeth glinting in the artificial light. This simple interaction was enough to send the Sakai diplomat into a near panic, his compound eyes nearly bulging from their stalks. This had to be some kind of trick. The Vzor would never allow themselves to be domesticated, especially not by soft, tiny, clawless humans. Backing away, the Sakai reconsidered his attendance at this year's summit. Was it truly worth the risk to remain in the presence of such terrifying creatures? The humans, however, seemed completely at ease, showing no signs of concern or fear as they interacted with the beasts. That evening, at the grand reception, the true nature of the Vzor's relationship with the humans became even clearer. The event, held in a vast chamber adorned with opulent decorations from across the galaxy, was meant to be a place for delegates to mingle and discuss the matters of the summit in a more relaxed environment. The human ambassador entered the room with Remus and Romulus, the two Vzor, at her side. The pair maintained a respectful distance as the ambassador moved through the crowd, stopping only to occasionally nuzzle her or to sniff curiously at the attaché case carried by one of her aides. As the evening progressed, the Vzor demonstrated an almost playful side whenever they interacted with the humans. If greeted or praised, Remus and Romulus would flop over, exposing their armored bellies for scratches, clearly enjoying the attention. But this seemingly gentle demeanor vanished whenever an alien delegate approached too closely. In an instant, the Vzor would shift their stance, muscles coiling with latent power, lips curling back to reveal jagged teeth, their eyes narrowing in warning. Claws, sharp and deadly, dug into the polished marble floors as they prepared to strike. The message was clear: the humans were under the Vzor's protection, and any perceived threat would be met with deadly force. One particularly unfortunate incident occurred when a Galvy server, attempting to balance a tray of drinks, inadvertently brought their balancing pole too close to the human ambassador. Remus reacted with lightning speed, snapping the pole in his powerful jaws, the sturdy metal crunching between his teeth like brittle wood. The server tumbled backward, drinks spilling everywhere, as Remus glared, his eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. A tense standoff developed, the room falling silent as every eye turned to the Vzor and the trembling server. But the human ambassador remained calm. "Remus, drop," she ordered in a firm but gentle tone. There was a moment of hesitation before Remus obeyed, releasing the mangled pole from his jaws and trotting back to her side, his demeanor once again that of a docile pet. The ambassador turned to the head of the Galvi delegation with an apologetic smile. Terribly sorry about that, but you know how protective the Vzor get with their humans. This casual reference to the humans as being owned by the Vzor only deepened the mystery and unease among the other summit attendees. The Vzor's reputation as untamable predators was well known, yet here they were, acting as fiercely loyal guardians to these small, seemingly fragile creatures. For the rest of the evening, the delegates could not help but cast nervous glances at the human contingent, now acutely aware that any misstep could result in a swift and violent response from the Vzor. As the reception drew to a close, one thing was certain: the humans were no longer seen as merely another species in the galaxy. They had proven themselves to be something far more formidable, with an inexplicable bond to one of the deadliest species known to exist. And as word of this bond spread, so too did the reputation of humanity's newfound power. The grand amphitheater of Orion Prime, where the Interstellar Alliance Summit was being held, resonated with the hum of heated debates. Delegates from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss the pressing issue of mining rights in the Omega Taurus stellar nursery, a region rich with untapped resources and fraught with political tension. The stakes were high, and the atmosphere crackled with the intensity of the negotiations. Among the delegates, the human ambassador sat calmly, her expression serene despite the fierce arguments unfolding around her. At her feet, the Vzor, Remus and Romulus, lay quietly, their massive forms coiled with potential energy. The other delegates, despite their ongoing disputes, couldn't help but cast wary glances at the two beasts, ever mindful of the danger they represented. The tension in the room wasn't solely due to the topic at hand. It was amplified by the presence of the Vzor, their very existence a constant reminder of the unpredictable power the humans wielded. The debate reached a boiling point when a poor delegate, a bulbous creature with a slimy, gelatinous body, grew frustrated with the lack of progress. The Poru were known for their impatience and aggressive tactics, often using their size and strength to intimidate others into submission. But today, they faced a different kind of challenge. In a bold and reckless move, the Poru delegate extended one of its feeding tentacles towards the human ambassador, snatching the notes she had been taking. The ambassador's expression remained unchanged, but Remus and Romulus immediately sensed the threat. In a heartbeat, the Vzor transformed from their relaxed, almost lazy posture into something far more terrifying. Nearly 700 kilos of muscle, sinew, and jagged teeth surged into motion as both Remus and Romulus launched themselves at the offending Poru. The sound of claws scraping against the polished stone floors echoed through the amphitheater, followed by a deafening roar that reverberated off the tiered stone benches. Chaos erupted as the Poru delegate let out a high-pitched squeal, its bulbous form quivering in fear as it desperately tried to retreat on its hover pad. The amphitheater, once filled with the din of argument, was now consumed by pandemonium. Delegates scrambled for the exits, their previous disputes forgotten in the face of imminent danger. The Poru's terror-stricken cries only served to heighten the sense of dread as it attempted to escape the Vzor's relentless pursuit. The air was thick with the scent of fear and the sound of panic, as alien after alien bolted from their seats, trampling over one another in their haste to flee the scene. But in the midst of this chaos, the human ambassador remained composed. Standing tall amidst the storm of bodies, she raised her voice with an authority that cut through the noise like a blade. "Remus, Romulus, stand down!" she commanded, her tone leaving no room for disobedience. To the shock of every delegate present, the Vzor halted immediately, their lethal momentum arrested in an instant. The massive creatures turned on a dime, their snarls fading as they obediently retreated back to the ambassador's side. Heads bowed low, they seemed almost apologetic, as if chastened by the ambassador's reprimand. The sudden shift in their demeanor was as jarring as their initial attack, leaving the remaining delegates stunned into silence. Slowly, order was restored in the amphitheater, though the air remained thick with tension. The Poru delegate, visibly shaken, kept a wide berth from the humans for the rest of the summit, the fear still evident in its quivering form. The human ambassador, ever the diplomat, offered a calm apology, her tone measured and reassuring. "I apologize for the disturbance," she said, her eyes scanning the room, meeting the gaze of each delegate. The Vzor are fiercely protective of their human companions. I assure you, they meant no harm beyond defending me. Her words, though meant to soothe, did little to alleviate the underlying unease that had gripped the summit. The other delegates couldn't shake the memory of the Vzor's snarling jaws and the sight of nearly 700 kilos of muscle barreling towards the poorer delegate. The incident had made one thing abundantly clear: the humans were not to be trifled with, and neither were their fearsome companions. In the aftermath of the attack, the Alliance Council convened to discuss the incident. There was a palpable reluctance to impose any formal sanctions on the humans or their Vzor. The council members acknowledged, albeit grudgingly, that the Vzor had acted purely on instinct, driven by an almost primal need to protect their adopted pack. It was a bond that defied logic and comprehension, a bond that placed the humans in a position of power and mystery that few could understand, let alone challenge. As the summit drew to a close, the story of the Vzor's attack and their instantaneous obedience to the human ambassador spread quickly among the attendees. It wasn't just fear that lingered in the minds of the delegates, but also a deep sense of unease and curiosity. How had these fragile-looking humans managed to forge such a powerful connection with one of the deadliest species in the galaxy? Theories and rumors began to circulate, each more outlandish than the last, but none provided a satisfying answer. The Vzor's behavior had only deepened the enigma surrounding humanity's rapid rise in the galactic community. What other secrets did they harbor? What other alliances had they formed with the galaxy's most dangerous creatures? As the delegates prepared to leave Orion Prime, one thing was certain: the humans were far more than they appeared, and their bond with the Vzor was just the beginning of a much larger, much more complex story. As the Interstellar Alliance Summit came to a close, the events surrounding the human delegation and their Vzor companions reverberated across the galaxy. News of the incident spread like wildfire, and soon every corner of the Alliance was abuzz with talk of the humans and their uncanny ability to tame one of the most dangerous species known to exist. The holovids of Remus and Romulus, fearsome apex predators reduced to affectionate, obedient pets under human command, garnered billions of views. Alien species from all sectors of the galaxy watched in a mix of horror, disbelief, and fascination. How could such a primitive-looking species hold such sway over these lethal creatures? Theories abounded. Some suggested that the humans possessed some kind of advanced technology that allowed them to control the Vzor, perhaps a form of telepathic manipulation. Others speculated about powerful pheromones or even ancient, forgotten techniques passed down through human history. None of these theories, however, seemed to fully explain the bond between the humans and the Vzor. The truth was far simpler, yet infinitely more perplexing. The humans referred to the Vzor as their beloved pets, speaking of them with the same casual affection one might use for a household animal. Got them as pups, the ambassador had remarked at one point during the summit, a statement that sent waves of disbelief through the gathered aliens. The idea of tiny, harmless Vzor infants was absurd, yet the evidence was right before their eyes. As the story of the Vzor spread, so too did the tales of other human-animal partnerships. The galactic community learned that Remus and Romulus were not unique. They were merely the first of many creatures that humans had somehow domesticated. Diplomatic envoys from Earth began to arrive at various gatherings across Alliance space, each bringing with them an entourage of astonishing creatures. There were the Mylodon Fetalis, massive saber-toothed predators from Earth's distant past, now entrusted to carry human children on their backs. There were the towering Reichhawks from Kark 7, fearsome avian hunters with wingspans large enough to darken a battlefield, yet they flew with human riders perched confidently on their feathery shoulders. Even the aquatic growth sharks, which had long terrorized the oceans of their home planet, were seen to relish the touch of human hands as they were stroked and groomed. With each new arrival, the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted. No longer were they seen as a mere curiosity, a young species just beginning to make its mark on the galactic stage. Instead, they were now viewed with a mix of awe and trepidation, their seemingly effortless ability to tame the galaxy's most violent and untamable creatures marking them as a force to be reckoned with. This newfound reputation came with its own set of complications. As the stories of human-animal partnerships spread, so too did the rumors of more sinister implications. Could it be that the humans were not merely taming these beasts, but somehow subjugating them, bending their wills through means that defied explanation? The more conservative elements of the Alliance began to voice their concerns, and soon, large swaths of Earth's fauna were preemptively classified as invasive species. Trade in Earth creatures became highly regulated, with stringent checks put in place to prevent the spread of potentially dangerous bioforms off-world. Humans found themselves under increasing scrutiny, their diplomatic cargo holds subjected to exhaustive inspections in case they attempted to unleash unknown dangers on unsuspecting planets. For a time, there was hope that these restrictions would curb the proliferation of human-animal partnerships, and that the galaxy could return to a semblance of normalcy. But this hope was short-lived. Not long after the summit, the galaxy was shaken by the first contact between humans and the Crumb, a species of insected death dealers who had long ruled over their bleak volcanic world virtually unchallenged. The Crumb, covered in thick, spiked exoskeletons and armed with razor-sharp limbs, were faster, stronger, and more deadly than any species the humans had previously encountered. On their home planet, the Crumb were the undisputed apex predators, their brutal hierarchy leaving no room for weakness or compassion. When the humans arrived on Crumb Prime, however, something entirely unexpected occurred. The Crumb, initially prepared to crush the soft-skinned intruders, were instead greeted with an odd and disarming display. The humans, far from fleeing in terror, dropped to all fours and began to excitedly stroke the deadly limbs nearest them, making strange rumbling noises in their respiratory cavities. The Crumb commanders, expecting the razor edges of their limbs to slice the humans to ribbons, were stunned when the humans instead persisted, their touch somehow gentle enough not to trigger the Crumb's instinctive response to attack. The humans remarked on the Crumb's sleek beauty, their vibrant coloring, and continued their bizarre behavior. Unnerved but intrigued, the Crumb allowed the humans to live and took them captive. But what was intended as an imprisonment quickly became something entirely different. The humans seemed positively delighted with their new surroundings, eagerly removing parasites from the Crumb's carapaces and lavishing them with the same odd tactile stimulation they had shown on arrival. This behavior, appalling and incomprehensible to the fiercely independent Crumb, nonetheless had a profound effect. Rough, battle-scarred segments of the Crumb exoskeletons, which had gone untouched for endless cycles, were smoothed and polished under the humans' diligent attention. The relief was undeniable, and soon, even the most hardened Crumb warriors found themselves unwilling to harm their strange new captives. As word of the humans' effect on the Crumb spread, the balance of power on Crumb Prime began to shift. Hive queens, once content to rule through fear and strength, now demanded humans for their own personal entourages, recognizing the status and comfort their presence could bring. Crumb warriors, who had spent their lives subjugating worlds for their empress, began competing for the honor of pulling human contraptions or receiving human attention. The humans, who had arrived as potential prey, were now the centerpiece of a radical societal transformation. When a massive Crumb war fleet appeared unexpectedly at Orion Prime, the Alliance defense forces braced for an invasion. However, the anticipated battle never came. Instead, a tiny diplomatic shuttle emerged, pleading in perfect Crumb for any humans present to return home for much-needed rest and relaxation. The galaxy was left in stunned silence. The humans had not been abducted or conquered, they had, through their inexplicable charm, convinced an entire planet of ruthless insectoid warriors to cater to their every whim. Now, when the galaxy ponders the humans and their unsettling influence, an ancient Terran adage often comes to mind: fear not the warrior who has trained 10,000 kicks once, but fear the warrior who has trained one kick 10,000 times. For when it comes to disarming and befriending the galaxy's most ferocious predators, humanity has long perfected that single, devastating kick. And as the galaxy's leaders contemplate the implications of this, they must also consider the even more alarming question: what else might the humans be capable of?